Corn tumbles down to the lowest level in the year, and Jerry Gidel will tell you why. Right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, before we jump into corn, I would like you to talk about soybeans because the carryout has lowered, but still the soybean prices are going down.
Yeah, they tried to bounce a little bit through midweek and that kind of stuff. Then they kind of slipped away after Wednesday. From there, actually, the weekly exports were pretty solid, I thought, along the way. And actually, the USDA on their adjustments here was anticipating the fact that the exports here were a little stronger by 10 million, I should say, last week on things than the previous month from there. But we going into a weekend this time of year. I think the producer out there is really going to be concentrating on some soybean yields or soybean harvesting and that. I think both of them will get some attention here, depending on where you're at in the country, and that on harvesting. Kind of a mixed bag of information that's come out so far. Some places have, been a little better than expected, a classic statement in the world of U.S. agriculture. And there's been other places that have been quite disappointed about what they thought they were going to get on both corn and soybeans at this point. From there, we really don't have much. We'll finally get our first soybean harvest number here early next week. But on the corn side, we supposedly had 7%, but a lot of that was dominated by some of the southern states, Texas in particular here, that has already harvested a lot of stuff. They do that in that northeast in the eastern part of the Texas here, where they have they harvest their corn there, sometimes a lot in July and early August. So most of that's come in, and it's been pretty good for that region. But there's been a lot of disappointment out west, and so I don't expect any wild numbers coming out of Texas here on yields when we get to next month. But the features here on the soybeans, and that another twist that came in here late today, or I should not say late, it was to some extent around even this morning before we had an update on our soybean crush, was that the Brazilians, who still have a few beans to market out here, and I think to some extent with the Argentinians putting out a pretty aggressive dollar soy deal, and that they says, well, we better get some of this last part of the crop that of last year sold, and they're supposedly were offering out this fall, September, October, even early November type shipments below the U.S. And so the market really kind of slipped into the defensive tone here after trying to put it together here. It's going to still be very interesting as to soybeans were still at pretty tight levels and that kind of stuff. Today's weekly, I should say monthly NOPA crush statistics that come out mid-month actually were disappointing from expectations. Trade was looking for 167, 168, and it came in 161 and a half million bushels here. To some extent, he says, wow, that means we're going to see our crush statistic really crater here. But I think everybody, and myself included, were looking for a 2 to 3 million higher maybe adjustment in crush, but now it's only going to be it's going to turn out to be a 5 million decline from the number, which to me continues to be quite surprising here at this point. I think maybe it has to do with the fact that we've been running at a very high pace here on U.S. soybean crush. And they just needed to take some downtime here to get things all spruced up for the fall. And so we had more people taking advantage of the early period of time here, and to some extent, maybe that would influence prices so they could get some cheaper beans this fall. But overall, though, the soybean stock situation is going to be quite interesting here. As we mentioned last week, that the soybean exports, they increased them by 10 million because of the actual Census Bureau statistics that were out for August, and now all of a sudden we come back and take 5 off of it. But the other big question is was last year's crop size accurate? I still feel like there might be a 15 or 20 million adjustment here, and so surprise, surprise, we can be a lot closer to 200 million on our October supply demand report. That's now about a month away, but it's not here today. So that's another feature that is out in front of us as the trade really kind of zeroes in on U.S. yields on soybeans, and also continue to keep an eye on how the Brazilians this year get off in plantings. Last year it was kind of stumbled along. It wasn't terribly behind normal at this point, but right now there's a projection that Mato Grosso and Goiás and the major producing areas of the north are going to be maybe not get until October. There's some of that comment. I don't know if we probably get something out, but it won't be a huge push here for plantings. And then there'll be different ideas as to are they going to be up 2%, 3%, 4%? We're going to have to all those kind of ideas. It will probably be an increase in Brazil. It always is. So that's one thing to consider here. But from there, let's. What are you thinking? You liking the corn though? That's an interesting one. It's been slugging sideways here for all week.
Yeah, so I think I'm wondering what are the fundamentals of going that low?
Well, it's a combination of we're down below $5, and that we've been running 6.5, sometimes 7, even right when the Russians invaded. We had some $8 spot prices on the futures. Not we had $8 in the cash all that often, but it was around. Right now, with a 30-40 cent basis here, we're a lot closer to 450. It's a combination, I think, of the wheat market not giving us much leadership, which has continued to be kind of a head scratcher with some of the things we mentioned last week about the foreign competition here being off pretty sharply in wheat. And on the corn side, I think the statistics that we know right now, right, looking at the export scenario, which was actually increased about 40 million up to 1.665 from the USDA's numbers of last week, and that. But they did take down ethanol, and that. Yeah, end up that'll be an interesting one to come ahead. Be considering the fact that there's right now this week U.S. crude prices approaching $90. There's a lot of incentive out there to keep processing corn into ethanol from that standpoint. And so last week's dip in U.S. Type of soybean crush for old crop might be quickly a change for the coming year here. They did not make any adjustments, by the way, in new crop demands out here in front of us, and from that standpoint, so that's an interesting. The one thing that still is going to be out in front of us here, though, and unfortunately, it's not going to be in front of our face until we get to the September 30th. stocks reports, which are really coming back to making judgments about all the crops from last year. The USDA at the end of last year, they decided to kind of add. They didn't really add a lot. They just didn't go down as much as some people thought on corn and soybeans. And I kind of feel like from what the data we had in June, now it's that was June 30th. So now we're 2 months from there. And we're still a few weeks away from the September 30th period and that. But I really think that there's a strong possibility of that particular factor on corn. The statistics that we came up with here in 1st of July there was head scratcher, to say the least. We had a stocks number that was 150 million over a year ago when we had less cattle in the feed yards. We didn't have as many swine out there and pork going through the system. Chickens were hanging in there, but they really weren't going crazy on numbers out there. So I kind of feel like that could still be a big factor. I know the USDA has just made minor adjustments. I think they're anticipating that to be a bad judgment on stocks, but at this time of year, you can make a bad judgment in December when you have a full bin, when you're at 2/3 or 3/4 the way through the season here, and you're looking into the bin and it's a lot lower. I think that's we'll see what that means, I guess, at this point. I think, but unfortunately, the one thing about corn right now is that with 6 million more acres planted, and even if we see a bushels go down here on yield, a couple bushels, and we get less from last year, we're not going to get our corn carryover stock for the coming year, down to last year's levels here at 1.5 million or 1.5 million bushels. We'll probably, at the best, even with all the adjustments we talk about here, we might get it down below 1.9, but that's a long ways from 1.5, and that's part of the reason why corn is going to be somewhat sluggish along the way, and along the scenario. The beans are going to have to be our leader here at this point, and maybe the wheat market will seasonally will start picking up some steam.
All right, and I guess we are going to say that we are headed to a choppy week.
Oh yeah, at the best, I think said sideways, maybe a little bit up at this point. Hopefully, we don't have to take another ratchet down here. I don't sense that that's the case, because I don't sense that there's any producers out there that are excited about making any sales. And the one things that'll happen here early is this harvest goes along will be previous contracts that are there. There won't be people selling a lot of grain. As they go across the scales, and that, or they'll deliver that stuff early and that type of thing. So it'll be interesting. I kind of feel like the markets, the trade, and even the producer out there wants to really get a better handle on what kind of crop we're going to have for 2023 here, and that. We're not going to see a number that's going to go 5 bushels down in U.S. yield, but at the same time, put that together with a little less supply to begin with and some other things down the road, that'll still tighten things up a little bit more, and it'll give the ability maybe to hold on to this crop size out here, and particularly beans. I think the producers are going to be pretty tight holders on those, and the protein side of this market is always an important feature when we look at prices, because the fact that the animal feed and exports are still very important on protein around the world. So we'll keep an eye on South America. We'll keep an eye on what China is doing over there. And of course, we'll keep an eye on the U.S. Fields out here to see what kind of yields we get going forward. But today, not a lot of wild enthusiasm for next week, but we do have warmer weather. Now, I don't know what that's going to mean. This means another kind of tightening of the yield belt here in the U.S., but that is still on the agenda.
All right. Thank you very much.
You bet. Have a good weekend.